What if I told you that one of the most prestigious and highly paid professions for women in the early 20th century was a deadly trap? Girls were intentionally taught to lick brushes dipped in radioactive poison, and they considered it a privilege. This is the story of the Radium Girls. A story of how far corporate greed can go to conceal the truth. A truth literally written in the bones of its own employees. To understand how this became possible, we need to delve into that era, the early 20th century. Radium wasn't just an element, it was magic, the elixir of the 21st century. It was added everywhere: water, chocolate, cosmetics. Pharmacy shelves displayed Doramad toothpaste promising a dazzling smile thanks to radiation. Doctors prescribed Radithor water to wealthy patients as a panacea for all ailments. You could even buy radium chocolate for rejuvenation. It was an atmosphere of universal euphoria and absolute blind trust in this new discovery. Radium symbolized progress, health, and the future. And so, on this wave, thousands of young women took jobs in dial painting factories. Their task was to meticulously apply luminous paint to tiny clock and instrument numbers. The paint itself bore an ominously ironic name: Undark. To achieve a perfectly fine line, the brush needed an ideally sharp tip. Management issued clear official instructions. After each stroke, workers were to moisten the bristles with their lips and tongue. This technique was called lip pointing. And when directly asked, "Isn't this harmful?" managers would respond with a paternal smile, "Of course not, dear. Radium will only make you healthier and rosier." Initially, everything truly seemed like a fairy tale. The girls earned about $20 a week, which was more than 3 times the average salary at other factories accessible to women. For young working-class girls, this was a colossal amount of money, almost a fortune. But the main bonus wasn't the pay. After their shifts, their hair, clothes, and even their skin glowed softly in the dark. They were local celebrities, Firefly girls. Some, going to dances, would even jokingly paint their teeth with radium to dazzle their escorts with their smiles in the dim light. They were the stars of their small town, shining both literally and figuratively. They genuinely believed they had found their dream job, their ticket to a better life. But they didn't know that this glow was the light of a slow and inexpressibly agonizing death. And the first ominous sign wasn't a cough or weakness, as with a common illness. It came in the quiet of an ordinary dentist's office, where, examining one of the girl's jaws, he encountered something he had never seen in his entire practice. His patient was Molly Maggia. She came to have a painful tooth extracted, but when the dentist took his instrument, the unthinkable happened. With a light, sickening crunch, he didn't extract a tooth, but the entire left fragment of her jaw. The bone simply crumbled in his hands, turning into porous, dead dust. This is not a metaphor, it's a medical fact, a horrifying phenomenon that would later receive its own name: radium jaw. To understand how this is possible, we need to look at the molecular level. Radium is in the same group of the periodic table as calcium. To the body, they are chemical twins. Tricked by this similarity, the body eagerly absorbed the poison and used it to build bone tissue. It was an ideal Trojan horse. And once inside, the radium began its work. Imagine thousands of microscopic snipers who have taken up residence in your skeleton and are firing at your own cells 24 hours a day. It was an internal bombardment from which there was no escape. Now, pause for a second. You are told that your own skeleton is killing you, that the building material of your body has turned into a weapon directed against you, and no one can explain why. What would you feel at that moment? Helplessness or anger? This is important because this very choice determined the fate of dozens of other women. Molly's case was just the first thunderclap. Soon, the epidemic engulfed others. One girl developed severe anemia. Another's hip and spinal bones fractured from the slightest movement. A third grew a sarcoma, a large, ugly tumor destroying tissue directly on her knee. By 1927, over 50 workers had died, and these were only the official figures. No one knew the exact number of those who slowly wasted away at home. It was a silent epidemic, carefully hidden behind factory walls. The corporation's initial reaction was swift and brutal. They hired their independent experts to prove their innocence, and the architect of this deception was Dr. Frederick Flynn. Examining the girls whose bodies were literally falling apart, he systematically delivered the same diagnosis: syphilis. The company launched an entire smear campaign, claiming that all health problems were the result of the workers' immoral and promiscuous lifestyles. This was a blow not only to their bodies, but also to their reputations. The disease destroyed their bodies, and the company's lies destroyed their names. It seemed that the truth was buried along with the first victims. But the corporation didn't account for one thing. Radium leaves a trace that cannot be erased, a trace that glows even after death. And to find it, one brave researcher had to resort to an extreme measure: exhumation. What he discovered in the darkness of the excavated grave changed everything. But for the management of U.S. Radium Corporation, this was not a discovery. It was confirmation of what they had known all along. Their own male scientists working with radium were protected by lead aprons and used long-handled tongs. Yet the girls in the workshops were told that the poison on the brush tip was good for their health. The most cynical proof of this deception emerged in 1928, the year Dr. Sabin von Sochocki died of aplastic anemia caused by radiation. He was the inventor of the undark paint itself. The company knew that the creator of their product was killed by his own creation, but continued to assure workers of its complete safety. When rumors grew too loud, they resorted to a classic tactic: hiring an independent investigator. Professor Cecil Drinker of Harvard conducted an honest investigation and came to a horrifying conclusion: the paint was deadly. He presented his report to the company. In response, U.S. Radium threatened him with a lawsuit if he dared to publish the truth. Then, they hired another, more compliant expert who simply rewrote Drinker's report, replacing the conclusions with the exact opposite. This is how alternative facts were created for the press and courts. Let's take a moment to look into the director's office. He wasn't a caricatured villain with a twirly mustache. He was a businessman. He looked at reports, he saw numbers, he knew the truth. But on one side of the scale were the lives of a few working-class girls. On the other, millions of dollars, the company's reputation, and the future of an entire industry. And he made a cold, rational choice: to sacrifice the few for the corporation's profit. And it is precisely this calculating nature, not blind cruelty, that makes his actions truly monstrous. But a man whom they could neither buy nor intimidate entered this game: Dr. Harrison Martland, the chief medical examiner for Essex County. He believed neither in syphilis nor in random coincidences. He secured the exhumation of the first victims' bodies, and in the complete darkness of his laboratory, he performed a simple but ingenious test. He placed one of the girls' bones directly onto a photographic plate. When he developed it, the result was undeniable. The plate blackened, imprinted with the ghostly glowing silhouette of the bone. This was a scientific method known as autoradiography. And it was the smoking gun. Their skeletons cried out the truth, even from the grave. In 1925, Martland published his findings, and not in a local newspaper, but in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the country's most authoritative medical publication. It was a scientific explosion. Now, the company's lies were visible to all. The wall of silence they had so carefully built collapsed. The truth was proven. But in the world of big money, proving isn't winning. The corporation had the best lawyers in the country and endless resources. Their strategy was simple and deadly: drag out the process. And the girls, they had almost no time left. For them, a race against death began, with the courtroom as the finish line. And that courtroom witnessed a scene that shocked America. 5 women were not walked in but carried in: Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, and Albina Larice. They were so weak they couldn't raise their right hand to take the oath. Their bodies were ravaged by illness, but their eyes burned with fire. These were no longer just victims. These were fighters, arriving for their final battle. The company's lawyers watched without a hint of sympathy. Their strategy was cold and inhumane. They demanded postponements of hearings, filed endless appeals, citing procedural trivialities. It was a legal version of a war of attrition. The corporation knew it had an infinite supply of moves, while for the girls each move could be their last. Their strategy was not to prove innocence, but simply to outlive their accusers. Let's imagine a scale of justice. At the beginning of this process, the girls' chances of winning were, say, 5%. On one side, dying women with no money. On the other, a corporation with unlimited resources. No experienced lawyer wanted to take on this case. A young lawyer, Raymond Barry, agreed to handle it pro bono, meaning for free. But every newspaper headline, every public appearance, shifted that scale a fraction of a percent in their favor. This was not just a legal battle, it was a media war for public sympathy. And in this war, they acquired a powerful weapon, a name. Influential journalist Walter Lippmann coined and popularized the term Radium Girls. This short, impactful name transformed them from faceless victims into national heroines. Their story hit the front pages of newspapers across the country. The pressure on the company became unbearable. The corporation began to rapidly lose in the court of public opinion, which proved more important than any other. Facing an inevitable PR disaster, the company surrendered days before the verdict. The court approved a settlement. Each of the 5 women received a lump sum payment of $10,000, equivalent to $170,000 today, and a lifetime pension of $600 per year. The company also committed to covering all their medical and legal expenses. But it was a bitter victory. Most of them died within a few years. They fought not for checks, but for their story to serve as a warning. They won. They set a precedent that entered legal textbooks. But did it truly change anything? Did their sacrifice impact the lives of ordinary people like you and me? The answer is yes, and it's far more significant than you might imagine. Firstly, their case established a crucial legal precedent, the right of an individual worker to sue their company for health damages incurred in the workplace. Before them, this was virtually impossible. They breached the wall of corporate impunity. Every time we talk about safe working conditions, hard hats, or respirators, we owe it to these women. Their struggle became a catalyst for creating laws that, decades later, formed the basis of the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. But their legacy was written not only in legal codes but also in scientific journals. Their radium-infused bodies became a tragic yet invaluable source of data. Scientists studied their bones to understand for the first time how radiation affects humans from within. This data formed the basis of safety standards for radiologists and atomic industry workers. And here's the most chilling paradox. Information obtained from studying their skeletons was used by scientists of the Manhattan Project. They calculated safe exposure levels for the creators of the atomic bomb. The deaths of these girls inadvertently helped protect those who forged the nuclear shield and sword of the 20th century. Today, in Ottawa, Illinois, a monument stands. A young girl holds a paintbrush. It is a quiet symbol of their struggle. But the most enduring monument is themselves. Radium-226 has a half-life of 1,600 years. This means that even today, a century later, their bones are still faintly radioactive. They continued to glow even in the grave. This glow, once a symbol of glamour, then a symbol of death, has now become an eternal scientific and historical beacon. It reminds us of the price of human greed and the strength of those who refuse to fade in silence. So, what lessons can we draw from this story today? Here's a brief protocol. First, question safety. Corporate assurances cannot be trusted without independent data. It's like safe vapes or organic products with questionable ingredients. Marketing always promises a miracle. Our task is to seek independent research, not believe advertising slogans. The story of the Radium Girls is a lesson in critical thinking, paid for with lives. Second, the power of publicity. Your voice, a social media post, or a review can trigger a chain reaction. Companies fear public condemnation. And third, health is not a bargaining chip. No salary is worth the risk if an employer conceals information about harm to your body. And now, the main question for you. In your opinion, what was the primary driving force behind this tragedy? boundless corporate greed, or the genuine scientific ignorance of the time? Write just one word in the comments: greed or ignorance. I'm very curious which will be more prevalent.